Okay, so they grow very close to the ground, and the gametophyte generation is dominant, as I told you already. And they have a flagellated sperm that swims to the egg. So here we can see this. On the Antheridia, they will swim to the Archegonia, where the female egg is, and then it will fertilize, make a zygote, and this will start developing into a sporophyte, okay? That will form a sporangia with diploid spores, which will then undergo mitosis and form a haploid plant structure, protonema. Okay? Then, probably because of the ecology, so the plants that could grow higher could take more advantage of the sun and grow more and be able to reproduce more, so again the fitness. Plants evolved vascular tissues, xylem and phloem, that gave them support against gravity, and also as it made the plant taller, it allowed to collect water from the soil and transport it to the leaves, right? So at this point in this evolutionary event where vascularization happened, we have now roots and stems and leaves. But still we have seedless plants. So the lycophytes, they don't have seeds. They're reproduced by spores, okay? And the same with ferns. What the ferns did is that they evolved megaphiles, which basically are the leaves that we are used to, and they are disposed on a fractal way. Not all of the ferns, but some of them. But even so, even if they are not disposed in fractal, this will increase a lot the surface area, and so it will increase the efficiency of photosynthesis, right? So this, after that, megaphils, we have these more complex leaves and tissues by now. Plants with seeds evolved. Okay, and at this point we have gymnosperms, which are pine tree, cycads, ginkgo biloba. And ginkgo, it's an interesting example because it's the only surviving species from a whole plant family that only survived because Buddhist monks of Japan planted these trees on temples. So like this tree here is 1400 years old, and so that's the only reason this plant is still alive. And today, with research, we find there is a lot of application, or at least potential, for ginkgo in cancer applications and also neurological disorders. So it's a good plant that was kept. That's what I'm trying to say. And these were the first plants with seeds. So here we have pine nuts, right? These contain the seed of the pine. So there's a pine cone. And the seeds contain embryo and nutrients within a protective coat. So the pine nut has a seed in there. And if you plant it, then a pine tree will grow. Okay? So now we have seeds, and before we had spores. Okay, then angiosperms, comparing to the gymnosperms, which only had 900 species, now we have 270,000 species, right? So those are angiosperms, flowering plants. Okay, and these are the only group of plants that form flower, and from a flower comes a fruit, right? So this is the passion fruit flower, and a bee comes and fertilizes this with pollen from another flower, and the female, the pollen will fertilize the ovaries, and after that, after fertilization happens, the fruit starts forming, and we have inside the fruit seeds, right? So if you plant these seeds, then a passion fruit plant will grow. The same here with bananas. So this is a banana flower, and we have a bird, a colibri, that's going for the nectar, and probably on this process also brings pollen from another banana tree. So it will fertilize this banana flower, and then we have bananas growing. And this is orange flower and an orange. And the orange, the citrines, at least I know the orange, is one of the few plants that have always like a flowering season together with a fruiting season. So it's a very interesting tree. And so the seeds are enclosed by an ovary, the fruit. And obviously the flower and the fruits improve pollination by giving a treat to either insects or birds or other animals. It will improve the spread of the seeds, right? And maybe that's why they have so many species compared to angiosperms. Okay, so now let's get out of plants. Let's come to Opisthokonta. So the opisthokonts comprise the true fungi and the animals. Okay? So, fungi kingdom. We will look into this in more detail in the next lab, but just here a few examples. We have the Amanita fungi, morels, and this is what grows on your bread mold, okay? And they are heterotrophic, so plants are autotrophs. They collect sunlight and they form their own source of food from the sunlight, and heterotrophs require digestion or absorption of nutrients, okay? So they need to eat. And most of fungi are parasitic or decomposers, and they produce spores. So we'll get into detail now on animals. So kingdom Animalia. On the last class I mentioned some developmental biology. So here we have protostomes, where the blastopore of the embryo will become the mouth, okay, and this will become the primitive gut. And we have the heterostomes, so the blastopore will become the anus, and this is the primitive gut here. Okay, we humans, mammals, are part of the heterostomes. So there are two main, there is one main, so this protostome, the heterostome, is one big way to separate the animal tree of life, and also the symmetry. So if we have a bilateral symmetry, we have these bilaterians here, okay, all of the body plan has a bilateral symmetry. And if we go, for example, if we look at radial symmetry, then we'll have cnidarians. There is no symmetry, then that will be sponges. And ctenophores, I'm actually not sure where they fit, but I will risk saying they have a radial symmetry. Okay, I'm not sure. So on this class I'm supposed to talk about vertebrates, but I'm just here reminding you of the biodiversity of invertebrates. So here we have a ctenophore, we have an annelid, which now we see a lot in Fayetteville at least. They're all coming out of the earth with the spring. Here's the mollusk, snail. Also the octopus is a mollusk without shell. It only has a beak, like a parrot beak. This is an echinoderm, sea star. This is a sponge, a glass sponge. So it actually makes structures of silica, like glass. This is a deep sea carnivorous sponge, so it can eat animals. Okay, that's a jellyfish, and this is a scorpion here, an arthropod. It doesn't have vertebrae. It has an exoskeleton. Okay. We have an endoskeleton, so we have a skeleton inside, while insects have an external skeleton. So let's jump to the chordates. The phylum Chordata. So I just took a leap from... Yeah, so now we are in the deuterostomy. We are here, okay? So chordates are deuterostomes, as well as echinoderms, sea star and sea urchin. All of the others are protostomes, so the mouth develops first. Okay, so chordates have these 4 characteristics that define them. So they have a notochord. This is the notochord right here. They have a notochord at least during embryonic development, and it's a supporting rod that's below the nerve cord, so that's the nerve here. They have a dorsal tubular nerve cord. Okay, so we have the head here, and there is a tubular nerve cord with neurons and also filled with fluid. The pharyngeal pouches that are somewhere, they're here. So pharyngeal pouches, which in fish and lanceolates and tunicates will form gills, but in terrestrial animals they will develop into other structures like the inner ear. And they also have a post-anal tail. So there is a tail, there are vertebrae beyond the anus. So that's the anus here, and this is the tail. Okay, so we have non-vertebrate chordates, which means they have an notochord, and they have all of the other things that I just mentioned now, but they don't have vertebrae. Okay, so the subphylum Cephalochordata with the lanceolates. So they don't have a jaw also, it's just a oral hood with tentacles, so they are filter feeding that just burrow into the sand. But they have a spinal cord and a notochord, and they have gills, and also they have a post-anal tail. The Urochordata comprise the tunicates. Okay, and in the adult form, they only have the gill slits, but during the larval form, before they attach to the substrate and become sessile, so they stop moving, in the larval form they have everything that we just mentioned, a chordate has. And biologists, scientists, a group of scientists posed the hypothesis that this could actually be the ancestor of fish. And if you look at the larva, you can imagine a fish coming out of this. But the same with the cephalochordates, right? So I'm not sure what's my position on this. I should look into that. So now we are here with the vertebrates, our subphylum vertebrates. So we have vertebra now. Okay, this is a human spine, and here we have frog vertebra. And now it's when we see most of the transition from the aquatic environment to the terrestrial environment. So again, we have a problem with moisture, so we no longer have water, so the environment is dry, and the gravity has a much stronger effect now. So in vertebrates, the notochord, the embryonic notochord, becomes replaced by the vertebral column. It develops into the vertebral column, and we will see now a bunch of evolutionary trends. So jaws evolved at some point. Bony skeleton, so sharks, for example, they are cartilaginous fishes. Lungs, forelimbs, eggs and mammary glands in mammals. Okay, so the milestones in vertebrate evolution of jaws, it allowed also to an increase on the ways of feeding that animals fed, the evolution of limbs, so when the transition from marine environment to terrestrial environment, again the effect of gravity is very strong, so the limbs need to be able to support the body, right? So that there was evolution of limbs also, from fins to limbs. Evolution of lungs to be able to breathe outside the water, and this was very important also. The evolution of the amnion and the shelled egg in reptiles, and the placenta in mammals, which again was driven by a virus. So let's look to amphibians. Amphibians are tied to wet habitats. Why? Because they have moist skin, very porous skin. So, and they breathe through their skin besides their lungs. So they need to be close to water so they stay hydrated. And also they lay their eggs in the water, which are covered with sort of gel. So the eggs don't survive outside of water. Okay? So amphibians are always very close to freshwater habitats. Here you can see the eggs of the amphibians. Here we have a axolotl, which there were some Mayan and Aztec gods inspired by the axolotl, and today it's a great model organism for study of cancer and also limb regeneration and just tissue regeneration in general. Here we see a pineal eye or parietal eye, which is a reduced structure that is in mammals. In mammals, it's the pineal gland, but in some amphibians and in some reptiles, it's still on the surface of the skull, so it's exposed, and it also has photoreceptor properties, so it's actually like a third eye. So then we move to reptilia, the reptiles that began the colonization of the land, the dry environment, right? So we see snakes in the desert. How do they survive in the desert? So comparing to the amphibians, they have a dry and hard and scaly skin, right? This will keep the moisture inside of them and prevent their internal water environment to evaporate. And also they developed and evolved amniote eggs. So these eggs, they have basically all of the moisture that the embryo requires. So a snake or a turtle or a lizard can put its egg wherever it needs to be. And again, here we have the pineal eye. Okay, so with mammals, there are a few evolutionary innovations. We have hair, fur. The lower jaw is hinged directly to the skull in comparison to the other vertebrate phyla, which there is a secondary bone that makes this connection. And we have mammary glands, which produce milk for the offspring. Also, this nursing between the mother and the offspring creates a maternal bond and helps structuring society. And we have marsupial or placental development, which allows the mothers to move while protecting the offspring, right? So if a snake puts their eggs on their nest, or a bird, then the mother will have to go find food, and it will leave the eggs exposed to predators, right? So it was an advantage that the animal could carry its offspring inside of himself, right? So that was an evolutionary advantage from the placental mammals, Eutheria, and Metatheria, which include the kangaroos and the koala and the opossum. And here we have Monotremata, they are egg-laying mammals, and we have the platypus and the echidna. Okay, and again, the evolution of the placenta was only allowed because of a virus, a fossil virus that doesn't exist in nature anymore. It only exists as a fossil in our genome, and that's called paleovirology, the research field that looks into extinct virus. Okay, so now we will finish soon with our introduction to phylogenetics, so that's your exercise 6. So yeah, you can do phylogenies based off DNA, morphology, and biochemistry, biochemical characteristics. And again, the phylogenetic tree is only a scientific hypothesis, and they're always subject to falsification by further studies. So, for example, all of these phylogenetic trees that I showed you are constantly being revisited and reviewed, and there are some things that are always more or less solid and don't change much, but there are some parts of the phylogenetic tree that have a lot of debate. Okay? So, yeah, to make your exercise on page 233, you just need to read this, and the only exercise is exercise number 6. Okay? So just draw the phylogeny here. Okay? And below this, if you want 5 makeup points, then give a brief description that you can write here. Okay? About the genus that's on figure 10.1, so here on the caption. And to make this phylogeny tree, so here by 1 it means yes, they have. By 0 it means it doesn't have. So does a sponge have true tissue? No, sponges don't have true tissue. Does a crab have true tissue? Yes, a crab has true tissue. So you can make a tree out of that. And you have an example on the previous page that shows you that clearly. So yeah, thank you and good luck, and just write me if you need anything. And also you are free to use the discussion board on Blackboard, and I hope you stay safe, and I will see you next week. Bye.